Media bashing is in fashion, and by default, journalist bashing. Have a heart. These are tough and terrible times. Violence is nearly everywhere, and journalists are in the middle of them all, unarmed, and losing lives in the process, in the cause of social good. Those who belittle and ridicule journalists had two options to correct that warped notion this week. One, remember that Bill Moyer's quote, which says, "The quality of democracy and the quality of journalism are deeply entwined." Or two, look at the visuals of journalists in Afghanistan asking questions to the Taliban. In fact, two journalists in Afghanistan this week have been exemplary examples of what journalism is all about, being the fearless eyes, ears and mouths of the people. Taki Daryabi, video editor, and Nematullah Naqdi, video reporter of the Etilatros newspaper, were brutalized for hours by the Taliban for covering a protest and left like this. The Washington DC based Committee to Protect Journalists reported that the two were beaten with batons, electrical cables and whips, and that both lost consciousness multiple times during the torture. And yet, Afghanistan's leading independent news agency, Pajwok Afghan News, dared to carry this news this week. 97% of Afghans could plunge into poverty by mid-2022, says the UNDP. Such straight talk is difficult to find even in Indian media, where we increasingly believe in carrying feel-good stories. No wonder Afghanistan had a rather decent rank of 122 on the World Press Freedom Index 2021, published before the Taliban recaptured power. Norway, Finland, Sweden and Denmark are the toppers, with the UK at 33rd place, the US coming in at 44th, Afghanistan at 122, India 142, Pakistan 145, Bangladesh 152, China at 177th place, North Korea at 179, and Eritrea at the bottom at 180th place. The lower the ranking on the Press Freedom Index, the more challenging it is to work as a journalist in that country. Given our rank of 142, we fall in the category of bad for journalism nations. And we do have a number of brave journalists who risk their very lives to inform the public, investigate injustice, expose corrupt politicians and leaders, and do war reporting, like the Pulitzer-winning New Delhi-based Reuters photographer Danish Siddiqui, who was executed by the Taliban just 2 months ago near Kandahar while on duty. And then there are Indian journalists who lay down their lives in India, like Israel Moses, only 26 years old, a correspondent of Tamil TV. His father is also a journalist in Chennai. Moses was hacked to death last year after he reported on encroachment on a lake bed near Sri Perumbudur, the place where former Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated. And up north in Uttar Pradesh, Rakesh Singh, a correspondent of the Rashtriya Swaroop Hindi newspaper, was burned to death in Balrampur last year after he reported on the misappropriation of funds by a local pradhan. These individual acts of passionate journalism are indeed heartwarming, but the overall picture raises some concerns. M.G. Radhakrishnan, journalist and group editorial advisor of Asianet News, feels there has been an erosion of trust in news media.
For the last 30-40 years, in spite of media growing in terms of size, in terms of presence and all, what has happened, what has conspicuously seen is that there is a steady erosion of public trust in the media. Media has been driven by so many interests, passive interests, commercial interests, the political interests. So in the process, the media has lost its credibility to a large extent. It is a sort of a wake-up call for the media to realize this.
On the brighter side, journalism is now drawing students from diverse backgrounds, says John Thomas, a journalist who has worked with Reuters, AFP and the Business Times in Hong Kong and Singapore, and was in the founding team of the Asian College of Journalism in Bangalore in 1994.
You would find people coming in now from a more diverse background than there was. Once upon a time, I think people who came in with some connect or some privilege. Now, first of all, there are so many more institutions and so many more seats available in classes.
Thomas also feels that social media has added a new strand to journalism, taking on issues that mainstream media have found tricky to address. The crisis of journalism and legacy media caused by digital disruption is not unique to India. But even then, in some ways, journalists in India seem to have suffered more. The sheer number of journalists in India who have lost their lives to COVID, for one. The database of the network of women in media, India, shows that at least 474 journalists have lost their lives to COVID until May 2021. And in April 2021 alone, 52 journalists lost their lives to COVID, reports the Outlook. And the casualties have included young journalists like Ashish Yechuri of News Laundry, son of CPM General Secretary Sitaram Yechuri, and senior journalists like the Financial Express Managing Editor Sunil Jain. And at another level, thousands of Indian journalists lost their jobs during COVID time when their newspapers or television channels shut shop, sent out with hardly any notice, and often without compensation. No doubt there is also a rising crescendo of allegations that big businesses, politicians and media have become a mutual protection racket. But it is also a fact that in these chaotic days, journalists with caliber and character are required more than ever to inform, educate and make sense of the chaos and speak truth to power, like Daryabi and Nakri did to the Taliban this week. It's good to remember that a nation of sheep will beget a government of wolves. Let me sign off with the heartwarming and absolutely stirring words of the new US Open champion, Russia's Daniil Medvedev, to the man he beat in the final, Novak Djokovic. I have never said this to anybody, but let me say it right now. For me, you are the greatest tennis player in history. It takes such grace to be a truly great champion. Thank you.